Okay, we are live. Hey, everybody. Sorry we are late. The technology gods were not on our side today, but we are here and we are excited to chat with Gail. So it's Dayana from Design Files here, and I am with Gail Doby, a coach and consultant who helps interior designers increase their profitability and overcome business roadblocks. And today we are going to be talking about her system called the Creative Value Blueprint and how to get paid what you're worth. So thank you for joining us today, Gail. How are you?
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Diana.
Yeah. And where are you calling, or where are we chatting from? Where are you located?
Well, I'm actually in Denver, Colorado, where it's actually sunny and beautiful today.
Nice. Awesome. I'm in California, so similar, probably similar climate. So I guess we can just jump right into it. And as everybody knows, we do have time for Q&A at the end, plenty of Q&A. So be sure to drop your questions as they come, and I will be checking them out in the comments. So let's start by diving into, what is a creative value blueprint? What does that mean?
Well, here's why it's really important to even have one, and that is to be successful in business, you have to have a plan. And so, what we have determined over time is we created this program called basically, or our specific methodology, which
Right.
is to help people make the kind of money that they really want to make. And I'm
Mm,
sorry, my lights are a little bit reflective. I'm just going to take that away and we'll be a little bit
okay.
dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, the creative value blueprint is to help people run a business that is based on who they are as a person. And
Mhm.
so we help them find the right beliefs that are going to help them be really successful. And we also help them find their foundational model, which will give them the kind of operational strategies for running a successful business. And then that third part is really about having the right community, the right people, the right mentors behind you, and making sure that you're getting the right ideal clients. So
Mhm.
if you can do all three of these pieces, and there are 9 parts of our model, I just simplified
Okay.
it for you. But
Right.
if they can do all three of these really well, they're going to have an amazing business that will fulfill them and give them the kind of compensation that they deserve.
Right. I love the idea of like breaking it down into 9 pieces because I think, when you're thinking about, oh, how am I going to, increase the value of my services? How am I going to raise my prices? It can feel
Right.
really nebulous. So I love this concept of like breaking it down. I'm guessing that like after you break it down to these 9 things that you kind of think, okay, how can we improve each specific one, right?
Right, exactly. And so we actually have one of our programs. We start people. Many of our people go through what we call our VIP experience, and it's a 3-day intensive. And we dive way down into their business, get down into their core beliefs, and figure out what's important to you. What is the value that you have internally that you have to satisfy, and why are you doing this? Why are you creating your business? And let's build a model that supports your lifestyle instead of you being in a situation of constantly wondering, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to get beyond where I am right now? And that's where a lot of designers are. They just go into this because they think, I love my business, but they don't know how to run the business and they don't know how to make money at it. And so what we do is we help them get past that and know exactly how to do that.
Yeah, makes sense. I love that. And one of the things we're going to chat about in a little bit is like kind of some transformation stories because I think it's helpful to get like, really specific and talk about examples. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's talk about like kind of increasing the value of like design services. So like what are some of the ways that designers can, bump up the value so that they feel confident bumping up their prices?
Well, sometimes this is the funny part, and this is the hard part for a lot of people. And you almost have to do things that hurt first and that you're a little scared of. And if you'll do those, then you'll get the confidence. So you have to sometimes jump in and raise your rates and then
Mhm.
go back to your clients and tell them why you're worth it. And
Right.
I just had somebody, I'm doing a class this week. It's a financial challenge, and I was talking to one of the clients in the class, and she was going to go to an old client. She said, well, I need to raise my rates. I said, go do it. You just go do
Mm,
it. And
yeah.
she was scared, and she came back today, and the client accepted her price.
Yeah.
So she was really excited about that.
Right. And something I've heard too is it's like if somebody can afford this much, they can probably also afford this much,
Yes,
right? Where if you multiply that extra amount by all of your clients, that's going to make like a huge difference for you. But for them, okay, it might only be right that 10 or 15 or 20% more.
exactly.
So yeah, so sometimes you will get those yeses a lot like easier than you think you would. So what are some of the common challenges and obstacles when it comes to like boosting profits? Like, when you workshop these things individually with designers, like what are the things that kind of come up again and again?
Oh gosh, there's so many. And one of the things I tell people is you have to charge more than you think you're worth, and
Mm,
then you will get what you're worth. And so you just have to do it one time, but raising your rates is essential. And I talk to a lot of people that don't do this on a regular basis. And at least once a year, you should be raising your rates. So that's really important. It's also important to know what it costs you to operate your business. So a lot of people will decide that they're going to raise their rates just because they think they should, or because they say that a colleague is also charging that in their area. And that's not the way to pick your pricing. The way to pick your pricing is based on what it costs you to operate your business and what kind of profit you want to make. So that's a different strategy. And so that's one thing that's really important. That's something we do with people, is help them figure out what to charge for their particular area. And then
mm,
another thing they can do, of course, is to raise their markups or even buy better. So if they are people that have been in the business for a long period of time, they might want to be starting to go to High Point Market and developing relationships with some of the vendors and
right.
getting special pricing from the vendors so that they're able to have a higher margin on their products. So those are a couple of ways. And
Hmm.
of course, just making sure you're billing all of your time, because a lot of people do not bill their time. They say, "Oh, I'm just too busy. I can't bill for that." And I say, "Well, do you really want to have a lower bank account because you don't have the time for that?" I think
Mm,
you have time to bill because it's really important for you to get paid. So, yeah.
right. Or they might, it's just like one quick call and kind of work it into their day. I love how you said you should be raising your prices at least once a year. I think that's a really good takeaway for people listening. Like if it's been more than a year, then it's time to like reevaluate, right?
Right.
And then also, like you said, the going for personal relationships with vendors, because a lot of times when designers start out, they use like the networks, and so at some point it can be really beneficial to like forge your own relationship with a vendor. How do you recommend designers go about that?
Well, I think it's really important to talk to some of your peers, and some people are afraid of talking to their peers because they feel competitive. And I would encourage you not to feel competitive, that your peers are there to help. And if you start building friendships with other designers, ask them who they're dealing with at market. Maybe they have some reps that they're working with, and ask them to make an introduction for you, because it's not a big deal for them to do that. And if you just start small, you just get one or two, and then go to market and meet up with other designers, and they will probably tell you, oh, this great person over at Century is who you should talk to, or you should talk to this person at Lexington. And before long, you're going to end up with a lot of vendors who are working with you on a stocking dealer basis, and you're going to have more margin for your business. You'll make more.
Mhm, mhm. Love that. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about. Okay, so we talked about some of the ways that designers can overcome these. So obviously, raising their prices annually, making more relationships like directly with vendors, obviously making friends with other interior designers is really smart. What are some other ways that interior designers can kind of like overcome some of the common obstacles to profitability?
Ah, well, one of the key ways is to hire. And this seems a little counterintuitive to some people. They think it's just too expensive to hire, but the reality is your employees should make money for you. So if you hire a designer to work for you, you should be billing out at least 3 to 4 times whatever you pay that person. So that means that you, as long as you have business coming in, and that person is billing their time, you're going to make money as a result of having team. It also displaces a lot of the work and takes some of it off of you so that you're not working all of the time. So
Yeah.
if people are smart about this, they'll start building their team and building a business instead of a job.
Right. So what's like a good resource for like finding an assistant designer?
Well, that's a good question,
Mhm.
because finding an assistant designer, it depends on your marketplace. We
Mhm.
have people that are in places like High Point, North Carolina. You can't exactly find highly trained people, so you may have to go to a local school and find somebody there that you can train.
Mhm.
I will tell you though, it's better to hire a more experienced person first and then start hiring other people that are less
Mhm.
skilled. So start first at the top, because that person will make you money faster. So going back to your question of where do I find them? You can post on LinkedIn. Some people do there, some people on Indeed, some
Mhm.
people in some of the trade magazines. So there are many different resources, but start with Indeed. That's a really good place to go. And then also check with people that you know. So I think one of the best places to find people is to go and talk to your reps and ask them, do you know anyone who's looking for a position? And you might be surprised how many times your reps know people who are looking for a different position.
Yeah, that's an excellent point about hiring somebody more experienced first, because you have to be a really excellent kind of delegator and trainer to like take somebody new. So that's an excellent point. What would be like some of the first things that somebody would outsource to this person? Like, would it be, measuring spaces, sourcing products? Like, what are some of like the, first kind of things that people would, hand over to their assistant?
Well, first they're going to train that person. And you have to remember the first 100 days or so are so critical to the satisfaction of the client, or I call them clients, they're internal clients. That's what we
Right.
call them. And so when your new team member starts, you want to make sure that they understand the overall of how your business operates before you start handing off too much. So you've got to do some work on the front end. It's going to take some time away from other projects, but the sooner you get that person trained, the faster they can take things off your plate. So if you hire someone who is, for example, a senior designer, you might give them a new smaller project that's coming in, and they can start that project and probably run it start to finish. So a
Okay.
senior should be able to run a complete project.
Right.
And if not, then bring them in to be a partner with you on projects, and then have them start doing some of the assisting things like doing the pricing, doing the proposals, doing the measurements, doing the drawings. And they can start with some of those tasks until you're sure that they can manage the full project.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting too, because you have to figure out what is like the right business model for you, right? Like, do you want to be hiring and managing people, and that way you can spend more time on like marketing and sales, and like how do you like if somebody kind of they don't want that avenue for themselves for whatever reason, um, how can they kind of grow their business if they're if hiring and outsourcing just isn't like a fit for them?
Well, they can only grow so far because
Right.
it's very, very difficult. I have had a few anomalies or unicorns that I'll call them, and that
Mhm.
can do $1 million of business by themselves, but it's not a very fun life. Yeah, to be quite honest, they do not get much break, and they were working 7 days a week and probably 15 hours a day. So I don't think that's really the right way to go. And a lot of people have fears around hiring. So
Mhm.
I just think that you have to do part of it because you're not good at everything. So for example, one of the very first things I tell designers is if you do nothing else, get a bookkeeper. That's the first person that you should get on your team
Mhm.
because you're not good at that.
Right.
I'm not good
Yes,
at that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody needs a bookkeeper. Totally. It's like the smartest
Absolutely.
thing to outsource first. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like even if yeah, I mean you could try hiring an assistant, but yeah, at the very least outsource the things that are like totally out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, CAD
Yeah.
work is a great thing to start with, and you can certainly have people do your CAD drawings for you. So that's easy to do. Bookkeeping, you can outsource for sure. And there are just a lot of things that you can get other people to do. So look at anything that is not in your zone of genius and make sure you get that off of your plate. And the
Right.
longer you're in business, the less of the day-to-day tasks you do and the more of the strategic things you start doing.
Yeah, makes sense. So I wanted to chat about like a transformation or two because,
Sure.
like I said earlier, I think it's so nice to hear like examples and stories. So I think you had mentioned wanting to share like Becky's story. So what
Oh,
was she kind of dealing with and how did she break through it?
well, when she came to me, it was 2014. So this is 8 years ago. That's a long time ago. And so she came up to me at an event. She was in tears. And we actually have a video of her talking about her experience. So
Mhm.
people are welcome to go look at that. But she was in tears because she and her husband both owned their own businesses and they didn't have savings and she was panicked about the cash. She was not making a lot of money and she certainly wasn't doing what she should be doing. So
Right.
we started her in a program of VIP. And then, through the program, I said to her one day, and it was so odd to have said this and have this happen, but I said, you never know what's going to happen in your life. And at that time, she was probably 40ish or so. And I said, you really need to have some cash reserves. So we need to set up your business so you start making more money. So I gave her the task. One of the first things I made her do was go out and
Oh,
double
wow.
her rates. And
Yeah.
so she said, well, how do I do that? And I said, let's script it. So we scripted it. Scripting
Mhm.
is really a key here.
Mhm.
And so she scripted it out and practiced it. And she went and talked to one client, and the client said, huh, that's really fascinating. Okay. All right. I'll pay you that. And wow, I think I need to do that. She went
Mhm.
to the second one, same thing happened. Third one, same thing happened. So at the end of this, she had within 6 months of our program, she had $100,000 in the bank that she did not have before. And
Wow.
shortly after that, she got deathly ill, almost died.
Oh,
She
wow.
was out of her business for about 3 or 4 months and she was able to continue paying her team and herself, and she had money left over when she came back to the business. And
Mm.
she went from there, where she was in our beginning phase program, and she's now in our boardroom, which is million plus. So, it's a pretty big transformation, and it was a stunning result for her.
Yeah.
So, really important to always, you never know when life is going to happen.
Totally. I love that because it's like a quick, injection of cash flow because I think a lot of times in the business world, we get stuck in kind of talking about mindset a lot. But
Yeah.
a lot of times having plenty of cash in your bank improves your mindset and then allows you to have more confidence, right? There's only so much that you can work on your mindset. It's like, well, having that cash flow, knowing, okay, I've got my paychecks for the next, 3 months, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good mindset, right? So sometimes it's like we just need that quick fix of like, well, we've got to, boost cash flow so that you can solve this stress, right? Because when you're stuck in that, that's just so stressful. So a note that you had written down here was layered confidence. That kind of makes me think of that. But what does that mean, layered confidence?
Well, layered confidence to me is that you start with a small win first. So if you're going to try to do something, I would say that what Becky did was a perfect layered approach. And
Mhm.
she started with one. And as soon as she got that one thing done, that one conversation that she was terrified to do, and she came back with a win, then she said, okay, there's a little bit of confidence from that. And then she tried the second one and it worked too. And then she got a little more confidence and she went back to the third one and she said, here's what I'm charging. And, to get that same response from three men that she was working with, they all said the same thing. Good for you. You should be doing this. And
Right.
so, it's you
Oh, that's
build.
great. I love that they were supportive, right? That they,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They were so thrilled for her because she's a delight, and, she's one of those people that people love immediately. So, she built her confidence that way, so that's all you have to do, and just know that you don't wait for confidence, and you don't wait to act to become confident. You act, and then you are confident. That's the way it goes. So you have to do what's uncomfortable to really hit that high level of confidence.
Yeah. And the right clients don't want you to be struggling, right? Like a lot of times you'll outsource something to somebody and you're like, man, they could be, charging more for that. Like I've raised people's rates that I'm outsourcing to because I'm like, especially women, right? You're like, no, do it, like go for higher. So it's interesting, right, that they were supportive. And a lot of times, if somebody's pushing back on your prices a lot, like it's just not the right client because the right client wants you to, do well and take care of yourself and your family, right? So I think kind of switching that around in your mind is good, right? Because if they're really pushing back, then like, do you want to work with them?
You're right. And amen to that. Thank you for supporting on that. Because
Yeah.
honestly, I think that I see this happen more for females than I do males, but I do see it in the males too. And so what I find is that this is where they lack confidence. They think, well, gosh, why would they pay me that much money? This is so easy for me. I remember hearing that from the architect I interned with in college. And I said, you've got to raise your rates. You need to make more money. So I, as an intern, because I have a finance degree, I would say you need to make more. And
Mhm.
so he did finally raise his rates because his markups were way too low. And he just didn't feel confident that he should be asking that. So you
Right.
have to know, this is why you have to know, what does it cost you to operate your business, and what do you need to charge in order to make a profit? And if you don't know that, then you are guessing and you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall. So that's not the way to run your business.
Right. And I'm guessing, I mean, obviously it's hard to do that on this call, but like, how do people calculate that? Right. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
well, I think, is that part of the resources that we have here? Because it's actually in the link, if this video that's at the top. Is that part of the resources, is like
I
some of
believe
those
we give you
calculations?
a calculator, yes, on how to
Mhm.
calculate prices on a project. It
Mhm.
doesn't help you figure the overall fees for your company, but that's more complex because we actually get 3 years of financials for people, and we analyze all of those, and we put together a financial model based on the number of people they're going to hire and their cost structure. And so it's not something you can just do quickly.
Right, right. But that's cool. You go back 3 years. I mean, that's interesting. 3
Mhm.
years of, revenue and expenses.
Right.
It's very interesting. Most people would probably not have thought to go back that far when calculating.
Well, we like to see the trends and how
Yeah.
they're operating, and it helps us understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so when we see the trend line, and then we can start tracking their progress over time. So we track our clients' projects or
Mhm,
progress. So, for example, we have people in our boardroom, and we have what we call a baseline year. And a baseline year is the year before they start a program with us. And
mhm.
then we every year we collect data to see where are they, how has their business grown. And the people that are in our current boardroom have over $60 million of revenue, and they have more than doubled their businesses since they have come into our programs.
Nice.
So
Yeah, it's so smart to actually track that, right?
you have to,
Take the
yeah.
time to actually track it. Cool. So I'm gonna take a look and see some questions that we have here.
Okay, great.
Um, okay, this is an interesting comment. It's not a question, but it's a comment saying that email time can add up. I figured out I spent 7 hours replying to a client's emails that I hadn't charged for. So just a good reminder to use the time tracker in, design files for each project. Super smart. So let's see. Do you find it better to use markup or margin for pricing? And maybe if you could give us a quick rundown of the difference and then which you find is better.
Well, that's a great question. Who asked that question?
You know what? I'm not sure. When I'm inside a stream, what would we call this platform, a StreamYard, it doesn't show us the
Yeah.
names, but that way we don't butcher people's names too. So it's
I
kind of a
love
pros and cons there.
Yes. Okay. Well, so let me explain what the difference is. And most people do not know the difference. So, markup is what you add to a product to be able to sell it. So, that shows up on your proposal. So, a margin is what is shown on your P&L. So, for example, if you have the product and you sell it for $150, and the cost of the product is $100, then your profit is $50. So if you want to know what the margin is, you take the $50 of profit and divide it by what you sold it for. And that means that a 50% markup equals 33% margin. So the margin shows up on your P&L and the markup shows on your proposal. So if you, I kind of like to say 30, if you're doing a margin, then you can say a lower number and it still means the same thing as a higher markup, but it sounds a heck of a lot better. So to me, I would rather say margin versus markup.
Mm-hmm. Is that kind of like, I mean, that's internal though, right? Because it's like, that's still something you're not sharing like externally. I'm a little confused when you said it goes on the proposal because you don't like reveal your markup, right? You just mean,
Some people are
some
very
people
clear.
do.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people are they believe in transparency, so they'll tell the
Okay.
client that I do a 50% markup. Well,
Oh,
that's kind of scary to a client. So if you
yeah.
said I work on a 33% margin, if they're a business person, they understand margin, and
Okay. Got it.
it sounds better. It sounds
Got it.
it,
Okay.
it's the same thing. It's just that one is on the proposal, one's on the P&L. So I like the word margin myself.
Okay, very interesting because some of the conversations we've had before it was, talking about really not sharing that transparently. And we have one question here that's asking, how do you handle clients that ask what my markup percent is? So you're basically saying that it's okay to share that.
If you wish, some people do.
Yeah.
I didn't when I was in my business. I just said I will give you a proposal, and my discounts and markups are different based on the product. So to me, what I say to the client is, we're going to make a fair profit, and we generally will be below MSRP.
Mhm.
And some people will do a discount from MSRP. That's another way of going about it. So you can do it that way as well.
Okay, interesting. So for the people that do put it out, like why do they like to share it? Like they must have just like super rich clients that don't care, or what's the
They
story?
do care.
They
Well,
care,
here's
yeah.
the thing, once they know how you charge, then they're thinking about every time that you are giving them a proposal, they're thinking, huh, well, they're probably going to sell a higher price product because they can make more money on it.
Yeah,
So the back end of this is it can kind of kick you in the rear, to say the least, and
right.
because the client is thinking, well, gosh, they're making this much money. I don't think they should make that much money. So they're making a value judgment that that person isn't worth it. So
Yeah.
that's why I just got to the
So
point where I said either some people will do MSRP or they might do a slight discount off of it because it sounds like you're getting something instead of losing something. Okay, so
uh
it's
okay.
psychology of how you think about how you do this.
Yeah, that's smart. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. One question we got here is Um, a piece of protecting profits is a good contract which
Yes.
speaks to how we handle trade pricing, sale pricing, etc. Do you have any recommendations for a lawyer experienced with interior designers who can review our contract?
I have
Your
a
lawyer friends? Yeah, yeah.
I have somebody here in Colorado, and sadly, I actually know his telephone number. It's 303-694-2000, and it's Curtis Shortridge. He's awesome.
Okay.
And but it's going to be Colorado law. So what I would suggest to you is that if you want an attorney to view your contract, I would look for somebody in your market area because you need to do it according to the laws of your state. I think it's really important to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You gotta, everything can change so much by state. So when you're hiring, like, do you recommend creating playbooks to guide new hires? Like, do you try to systematize the onboarding and the training? And if so, like, what formats and tools do you use to do that?
That is a fabulous question. And we are just in the process of doing a very big fee and salary survey. We've just completed the survey. We're getting the reports ready for the fall. If any of you are coming to High Point Market, I'll be speaking there this fall in several stages, and we'll be talking about this. Um, but when you're bringing somebody on, you need to have at least checklists for things, and you need to have a plan. So for example, the first 2 weeks are critical for people, And I remember one of my clients who told me, or one of their employees told me, I didn't even have a desk and I didn't have a computer when I got to work. So have those basic things ready. Have the paperwork ready for that person, ready to sign on with you. Have somebody on your team take them to lunch. Have the whole team take them to lunch. And really think about the experience of what it's going to be like to join your team. So make them welcome and
Yeah.
make them feel like they know what they need to do. So make sure somebody has a list of, here are our clients, here are all the people, here are their personalities, here's the scope of the work. Have
Mhm.
some things like that ready for them. Teach them the software tools. Have all of these things laid out in a schedule for them, at least for 2 weeks, and preferably over the course of 90 days to 100 days. Those are the most critical days for bringing your team members on. So here are a couple of other real tips that I think are really terrific. And
Mhm.
that is, if you have something, for example, you're going to use design files and you need to teach somebody how to use design files, what I would do is I would pull up either Zoom or Loom and I
Mhm.
would make a recording as you're teaching the person how to do the task. So then you have a training tool that you can use over and over and over again. So that's a really simple way to do the training once and have it work for you for many, many years. So that would
Yeah,
be a shortcut for you.
I love that. Loom is really great for stuff like that, and it's pretty affordable too, so that's a really good tip. Let's see. Okay, do you recommend billing hourly versus flat fee? What's your thoughts on that?
I will tell you, I have looked at, I can't tell you how many people's P&Ls, and
Mhm.
I've had many people who have done fixed fees, and I love fixed fees, but you have to know how to do those. And so definitely download that toolkit that I shared with you
Mhm.
because you will be able to do a fixed fee that's profitable. What I find is that of the people that I have seen their P&Ls, if they do a fixed fee, they're generally 50% under what they could have been billing.
Mm,
Percent.
wow.
Yes. So if you think about that, if you were to time bill and that you could actually make more money that way, you can, as long as you're billing for your time.
Okay. So do you recommend, like, a lot of designers, like, switch to hourly, or have you recommended that in the past?
I have, and in some cases it works really well, and in some cases you end up having a lot of pushback from the clients because they feel like it's never ending. So you might have to give a range of, here's what you can expect for your fees over time, or
Mhm.
put it on some sort of an hourly basis so that people are not getting hit with these huge bills. Like, for example, right at the beginning of the project is when the most work happens. So you tell your client in advance, set that expectation, and then what you do is you can offer them a payment structure that is spread out over the course of a year if it's a big project. So
Ah,
that's one way
okay.
of getting around it.
That's interesting. Yeah. So this is kind of a related question. When you're in your first or second year of business and you don't have a past project as a reference model, how can you be confident that you are not shortchanging yourself or conversely overcharging?
Well, that's why I think it's really especially important if you're new in your business to charge by the hour.
Mhm.
But you're probably going to make some decisions about whether you can bill for all of that. Because if you're not terribly experienced yet, you may find that it's taking you a long time to make a decision. So one thing I want to suggest this, and this is going to be one of the hardest things for everyone to do, and that is to learn to be decisive. So,
Mm,
one of the areas where they get in the biggest trouble is they second guess themselves and they go back and reselect and reselect and reselect, and they keep delaying making decisions. Get good at making decisions. The faster you make decisions, the more efficient you become. Put timers on yourself. Just find out
mm,
how long it takes you to do things. Start really paying attention to how you work, because if you will see, it takes me 3 hours to pick a fabric. Well, that might be too long. You might need to get to 1 hour. So start
mhm.
pushing yourself and start noticing how long it takes you to do things, because then you can start project managing. You cannot project manage unless you know how long it takes you to do things.
Ooh, super interesting. Then that's like something you can use when you're scaling and outsourcing, right? And that, okay, each phase you've got it down to how much time. So that's, yeah. So you actually have people, time themselves for each activity, right? Okay, like this is this activity, and probably don't want to multitask too much within that window.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Multitasking is absolutely the most inefficient thing in the world that you can do. Do I have a second to put them through a little exercise?
Yeah, definitely.
I want you to think about this, everybody. And if you have a pencil and paper, just go ahead and jot some notes here. And it's an exercise I ask everyone to do. So think about your day. How many times do you get interrupted per day? Go ahead and chat that in. Let us know.
Let's see. Yeah, we all probably get interrupted a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have a calculator, pull out your phone. You can do this calculation. Okay. So do you all have a number?
Oh, we got one saying 10 times.
Okay. 10 times.
Many.
Many. Okay. 20 or more. Okay. Let's take 10. Let's make it easy. And let's just say that it takes you somebody 10 minutes to interrupt you. It's going to take you another 10 minutes to get your head back in the game of what you were doing before. Because you'll say, now, where was I? If you ever ask yourself that question, you have been distracted. And therefore, you will find out very quickly it's not good to multitask. So if you figure that's 20 minutes, 20 minutes times 10 is what? It's 200 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 200 minutes. Let's just round this up. Let's just say it's 3 hours, okay?
Yeah.
So 3 hours times 250 days a year is 750 hours that you're losing through interruption, and then multiply that by your hourly rate. That's how much money you're losing by multitasking.
Right. How do we not multitask?
You actually learn to block yourself out. There is a way, if you use Google Calendar, you can actually put focus time on there, and that tells people, do not bother me. You put do not disturb on, and you tell your people on your team, if I've got my headphones on, don't interrupt me. That just becomes the law of the land in a small office.
Love it. That's great. I love the math. We all need the math to put things in perspective.
So did you come up with a number for how much that was? Because that was $75,000 if you're $100 an hour.
Yeah, makes sense.
$75,000 that you could have billed out. What could you do with $75,000?
A whole lot.
Yeah.
So how do you say that again?
You can buy a car.
Yeah, car, down payment, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you explain a price increase for previous clients who paid much less initially? So we talked about Becky. She obviously doubled her prices and explained why. Like, what are some examples of the why that somebody could give for their reasoning?
Well, luckily today we have inflation, so people are getting pretty good at understanding prices and costs of operation have gone up. You go into a restaurant, you're going to pay more. If you go into the buy groceries, they're going to pay more. You have employees that have to pay those things, so you have to pay them more. So your clients are smart; they understand.
Right.
So what I would tell you is, with the past clients, what I do is, if you do this annually, you will send out a letter and say, okay, our rates are going up. And you also include this in your contract that our rates are good until whatever the date is, and it expires. And then you send out a letter at least 30 days in advance and say, by the way, the rates are going up. But if you would like to buy a block of, say, 20 hours at your current rate, you're more than welcome to. And then we will be, from there on out, billing you at the higher rate. So that's a really easy way for you to get your higher rate.
That's an excellent idea. Yeah, give them a chance to kind of get one last, project in or whatever, wrapping up some of the management stuff before it goes up.
Right.
So another question is, how do we account for all the extra time it takes lately dealing with tradesmen and delays? This is killing our profit.
Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely a scary thing. Luckily, I am hearing trends that the lead times are getting better and the supply chain is getting a little bit better, but it's a big issue. And therefore, I think today you really do need to bill for the time that it takes you to manage the process. And I prefer to call it project management. And that is something that seems pretty acceptable to the clients because it is managing the project of purchasing. So to me, that would be something that I would highly recommend, is that you do bill for that time.
Yeah. And the client isn't waiting for it to get better, right? They've decided to take on this project now.
Yes.
So, right, it's kind of on them that extra time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also find too, and I just want to throw this in because this, we all have experienced this, those of us that have been designers, is you have clients that aren't very good at making decisions. So it's another reason I like to start with time billing first, because I want to find out what that client's like before I'm going to get into a relationship where I'm going to give them a fixed fee if they're indecisive. I have a great quick story at a client who's told me when we signed on in the contract, she herself said, I have a hard time making decisions. I should have said, I should have run the other way. But I did bill by the hour, so I was okay.
Yeah.
But she really needed somebody to hold her hand. She said, will you
Oh,
hold my hand? And that's another bad one.
right.
Bill by the hour.
Right. That's kind of interesting too. You could change, right? If you see one of those red flags, then you could say, okay, this is for sure an hourly project because they've made it clear that it's really hard for them to be
Yes.
decisive. So how do you suggest that designers find higher end clients?
Well, this is you being very strategic, first of all, and hopefully you do have an ideal client profile. And if you don't, it's in the toolkit that you're going to download. And I would highly recommend, you may have 2 or 3 of these. And if you want to work with an affluent client and it's a residential type of project, know who you're looking for, but really think about this. You can probably figure out, where are they involved? What kind of charities do they get involved with? Where do their kids go to school? What kind of products do they buy? Do they buy from a particular boutique? Can I become friends with a boutique owner, because that might be a really good way for me to get referrals from somebody? How about
Mhm.
your hairdresser? How about a personal trainer? How about somebody who owns an aesthetic spa? These people could be referral partners for you. So just really think about it, and who is doing business with the people who are more affluent. How about those architects and builders? Those are the people you need to start building those long-term relationships with. Those are going to take you 1 to 3 years to build those relationships, but that's how you get to that higher end client. And the
Mm,
big thing here is making the decision that that's what you're doing. And it took
mm,
me about 5 years to really break in and get into the ultra high end in my marketplace. But by the time I finished my design business, I was working with centimillionaires. I was working with very wealthy people. So all you have to do is make the decision you're going to do it, and then you'll do it.
Yeah, and work towards it. I love this kind of out of the box thinking of like the aesthetics spa, right? Like, well, who's the local Botox lady, right? Swap referrals. Like, that's very out of the box. I love that. But it totally makes sense. Another idea that came to me because you were talking about schools is like sponsoring, like a high
Oh,
schools, like, when they have like, or what are those called? The banners, the posters around the
sure.
baseball field or whatever. So yeah, that's really cool. Let's see where, I lost my spot in the comments. Okay, here we go. I'm back. Would you recommend to ask for the full service fee before one starts the work or only a portion? So I guess we're talking about, do you recommend getting a 50% deposit and the rest later, or do you recommend getting paid in full upfront? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends on how gutsy you are. But if you feel like, if it's a smaller project and if it's maybe 10 or 20,000 fee, then I would say for sure get it all if you can. And if not, just at least ask for 50% and try to get paid for it completely before the project is done. Because what I find is, often as the projects linger, they start adding scope, and then you're going to have to address that and tell people that I'm happy to do that extra work for you. Let me get you a proposal on that, or let me add an addendum to the contract. So be really careful about this kind of thing and make sure that you're always staying on top of this, and then that you're billing for those additional services throughout. but try to get paid in advance before the project is done, because people tend to negotiate right at the end, and you've got a retainer sitting there, and they might say, well, I'm not paying you anymore. You've got the retainer. That's all I'm paying you. And it might not be enough to cover the last bill. So just keep in mind that not all people are, I hate to say this, but they're really not as nice as you might want to believe.
Right, right. Makes sense.
When it comes to money.
Yeah, unfortunately not. Okay, so here's a question about like markup percentages. Okay, so I have an existing client that is asking for my markup percentage. I told them I don't have a set percentage markup, as it's different percentage with different vendors.
Yes.
But I will give them the best price I can, and it will be below MSRP. I feel like I have worked hard to establish those trade accounts, and it is private information. I heard someone explain it once like this: you don't go into a Nordstrom store and buy a pair of shoes and ask what the buying office paid for it.
Mhm.
So how can people kind of like, how can people push back? They're saying like it's about setting boundaries, but like how do you kind of deal with when clients are continuously asking for that markup and kind of pushing back?
You can give them a range and tell them sometimes we don't get any discount. And sometimes we get a discount of 40%, but we're going to charge a fair price to you. And it's going to vary, but we're going to be fair with you. And this is a trust game. And if you trust us to do a good job for you, just understand that we must also make a profit. And I don't apologize for that. I think you just have to be very strong in the way you say it. I think you had a great explanation, the person that typed that in.
Mhm.
So I would just use that and stick to your guns. Yeah, you have a right to make money. You do.
Oh, I love that. Okay, and then somebody is still a little confused about the example of markups that could
Sure.
come back to bite us in the rear. Could you explain that? I did get a couple questions. I got some like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and then some that were like, wait, we're still confused on this, markup, margin, differentiation, and how kind of sharing that could come back to bite us. So can we dive a little deeper back into that?
Sure, absolutely. So you can explain it pretty much the way I did too.
Mhm.
And so a markup is based on taking a product and adding dollars to that product cost to make a sale price. So if you have $100 item and you mark it up 50%, then what is the sale price of that product? Go ahead and think about that for a second and then pop that in chat. Okay. So you're going to charge what?
Hmm.
Don't be shy, folks.
Yeah, I'll see you try.
We're
Yeah.
here to help you.
Darn this math.
Yeah, darn that math. So
Yeah.
$100 plus
150. We got
$50. There you
150.
go. There's the answer. It's 150. Okay, so you're going to sell it for $150. So remember, if you take the $50 was your profit, right? So if you take that $50 and divide it by 150, then it's 33%. So your margin is 33%. The markup is 50%. It accomplishes the same thing, but the margin shows up on your P&L. And so that you're getting, your profit is 1/3 of the sale price. That's what it is. And that's what you can tell your client. It's 1/3 of the sale price or whatever it is. You just explain to them that's the profit that we're making on that product if you choose to share the margin. Okay.
Love that. Okay, how about I've had two extremely wealthy clients, billionaires, in my 16 years as a designer. They were both so picky about my pricing, didn't want to pay shipping fees. Have you had any experience with these types of clients?
Yep.
Or hints about how to deal with them in the future? Like this person is saying they find clients with a lower budget easier to deal with. Obviously, as somebody who has, who, like you said, transitioned into working with very wealthy clients, how did you handle those sorts of conversations?
Directly, head on, honestly, and I stood my ground. And
Yeah.
you have to get good at this because these people expect you to be confident and that you can defend why you are doing what you're doing. Because I hate to say this, and this is so terrible, but a lot of times you're dealing with people, sometimes men, that can be really pushy, because this is how they make money, is how they get the best deal. So that's fine, but if this is why you've got to know what it costs you to operate your business and make money, because if you end up making a concession, you'll eat it every single time. Let me give you an example. I had a client yesterday. I was talking to her. This is a big LA firm. Let me tell you, these people, they have, I don't know, 15 designers on staff. And they told me 6 months ago that they were going to do a project because it was a really high visibility project, and that they wanted to do this project. It was in the Hollywood Hills, a really big deal, million-plus project. And they agreed to work only for their hourly fees. And I said, you guys aren't really doing as much of your hourly billing as you need to be doing. You need to be capturing all of it, especially if you're going to do this for no markup. I said, but I wouldn't do this because you're losing money. And the reason this is really important, that you got to stick to your guns with this. If you know it costs you 40% of every dollar to operate your business, then you've got to have 40% gross margin just to break even. So you can't give it away. I said, you're losing money on every single sale to that person. And I said, you could actually put yourself out of business. Well, they went ahead and did it, and they're regretting it, because it was the carrot that this was dangled in front of them. It's a high visibility job. They wanted the visibility. They wanted to be able to publish it. And they did beautiful work. They shouldn't even have to do this. But this person has turned out to be a snake. So be careful. You've got to be the business person here and set the limits and boundaries so that you make money doing what you're doing.
So smart, because a lot of times they are just going to throw out these things to try to get that better deal. That's what they do all day long. So they're like, sure, let me do it with this person. And you got to be like, nope.
Yeah, and they'll do things like this, and they'll say, "Oh, but we've got all these friends." Well, you know what? Their friends are going to be just like they are. And so you're going to end up with the same deal over and over again, and it may not be the best deal for your business. So you got to be a business person first, and don't let other people convince you just because they're really good at influencing people to do what they want. This is the way they've won. So you be the tough business person, and you make sure that you make money.
Yes. Okay, so we will just dive into one more question, if that's okay with you. Somebody's asking, can you explain the journey of the client from, let's see, website to portal, especially if the website is not an e-commerce? I'm not sure if I'm understanding this question. I wonder if they're talking about their website to, I was thinking maybe if that person could clarify that question. Sorry. I thought I understood it, but I'm like, maybe not. So they're saying, clarify the journey from the client from the website to the portal, especially if the website is not an e-commerce. Is it risky to lose them on the way to two platforms? So I wonder if they're talking about on the marketing side, or if they're talking about the client buying side, like if the client is doing some of their own buying. Not sure. Do you know what that means? No.
What if they compare my packages to other competitors?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I mean, honestly, the way that most people get clients is because people like you. People make decisions emotionally, and they justify them rationally. So make sure that your website connects with that buyer, your ideal buyer, and have testimonials on your website. Have stories about how wonderful you are to work with, and how you stayed on budget and on time for the project. Make sure that you're sharing that kind of work in addition to the beautiful work that you do, but also be buttoned up in the way that you do your work, and be confident. So when you go meet with someone and they're interested in hiring you, make sure that you can talk to them about what's different about you versus somebody else. Why should they hire you? Ultimately, they're going to have to like you more than the other person and feel like they're getting the right person. They might be willing to pay you $50 more an hour than somebody down the street because you're really buttoned up with the way you do work. So just really think about this. Everything that you do is a reflection of your brand. Every single thing. Everything that you do, everything you say, whatever's on your website, all of that is a reflection of your brand, and the brand experience and the brand personality that you bring to it is what is going to differentiate you from your competitors. So if you want to be confident and earn more, you just make that decision that you're going to do that and go in confidently and sell that project.
Love it. That's a fantastic place to wrap up. So as I mentioned, like above in this description, we've got the link to Gail's awesome resources. Do you want to just like describe what those are? It was like the calculator.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, in particular, there are the two things that I think are extremely important out of this. One is that there is a calculator, and it took us months and months and months to do this, but it will allow you to figure out cost per square foot, possible design fees for a project, and it will allow you to back out all the things that are part, like markups and sales tax and freight and all those things. You can back all that out and figure out on a project, if somebody says, I have $250,000 to spend and that's it, you need to back all those things out to figure out what you can actually buy. So how much of that money can you use to go buy it? So, it might be 150,000. So you need to know what it's going to take to stay under budget for that client. So this calculator will allow you to do it. It will allow you to do a fixed fee, an hourly fee, or even a cost per square foot. And it also gives you ways to track and also how to price out the different rooms. So that's one of the tools. It's free. We're giving it to you, and it took us months to develop. And then also there is an ideal client profile. So if you don't know who that ideal client is, go download that and do one for every type of business you want to do. So if you're residential, do one. If you're doing commercial, do another one. If you are doing building for people, that's a third one. If you do renovations, that might be a fourth one. So do an ideal client profile for each of those.
Very smart. We super appreciate those resources and giving us your time and your expertise. Super, super appreciate it. Thank you from us here at Design Files, and have an awesome rest of your day.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Bye, everybody. Bye.